Hello and welcome everyone to episode 4 of the VIP Productions, where, along with myself, Robert, who's glad to have a job thanks to the certain recent actions of my co-partner. Although he's still the booker, he's the man with the pencil, the man who's apparently decided my fate and fucking fired me.
To be fair, mate, you fully deserved it. But
Of
we got
course I did.
everyone. How you doing? Are we well? Everyone well?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Yourself?
All right, mate. Always good. I'm not English fan either, so absolutely bouncing.
Also for official record's sake, JJ cannot fire me from this position. The only way he will get rid of me is if he somehow kills me.
Tune in next week.
Oh, thanks. But like I say, onto the topics at hand. We are going to be covering the results of Born in Fire 12, the aftermath episode after it, and we're going to be looking back at some of JJ's first baby steps into e-fedding itself.
Yeah, we're going to go back to 2008. I think it's the first pay-per-view we're doing is from April. Which I was like joining up. We'll get to it. I was joining up, but so I know bits. But
Yeah.
it's supposed to be like a revised history, isn't it?
Like I say, with me and the revised history, I think just going through the history itself is nice. It's just nice on its own. I mean, we're both. I mean, I wasn't even there yet, and it's just.
You were.
Oh, I was.
I think you must have like amnesia or something, mate, because your character was in it at the beginning, 2007.
Where was I 07? You were an established champion.
No, mate, like I joined in 2008. But if you go back, I'll send you the link later, right? If you go back to like the shows from 2007, your name's on there.
My first promo though was interrupting you, and you were already a champion.
Well, mate, honestly, like I'm telling you. So unless somebody else came up with was using exactly the same character,
maybe it's just like back in the early days. I mean, it was on and off period. I mean, I was like university and college and university and all that.
Yeah, I think a lot of us were a bit like that. I was in and out, mate, in and out for a while.
But yeah, let's focus on before we go back in the day to our childhoods when we all still had hair and it wasn't grey.
I was gonna say I've got loads of hair, thanks, but like it is grey. Like I'm like my beard's grey, everything's grey.
Yeah, I've been grey for quite a while now. I'm slowly losing hair in the front, but well. Born in Fire 12.
Oh yeah, Born in Fire 12.
How do you think it went personally from a creative standpoint?
Like I don't want to like sit here and nosh myself off, but like I thought it was really good. Personally, I thought it was not from like just from a writing perspective or storylines, but I do think it's one of the best pay-per-views we've ever had. Quite simply because, as I've said, it's not just blowing smoke, but I think everybody's promos were on point. Pretty much the whole card, I'd say from top to bottom, was stacked with really, really good matches. Everyone delivered, which helped me to deliver. Obviously, the general consensus and feedback was really positive, which was nice. I just think it worked. I think it worked in terms of culminating certain storylines and obviously opening up some new ones as well.
Definitely agree with you on that end part. I mean, I'm just looking. Give me a second to look through the Born in Fire promos for it.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
I mean, we're opening up with the freshest ball match, which is Angus Plague v Diego Romero versus Hugo Browning versus Kilbane versus Marty Helms versus the Villain versus I'm not even going to say it, Tony Monk.
Yes, Don Monk, Bob Monkhouse. Look, that's it. I think we talked about it in the sort of pre Born in Fire podcast. Like that's a top opener. Obviously, a lot of these guys. We've already mentioned it before. When you get an influx of new people, I think if you can retain one or two, you're winning. So we're still kind of on the fence with a couple of them. We just don't know. I've spoken to these people. They assure me they will promo, but whether that happens or not, I don't know. But for me, like, you stand out. Obviously, getting Marty Helms back is massive for the Fed.
Yeah.
He's a huge star anyway. We're just kind of bringing him into something new, which obviously we'll get onto. And obviously Angus Plague won the match. He won the freshest ball, which for me was, I'll be honest with you, it was a real no-brainer decision. That's no slight on, like I said, Marty or anybody, but he's only just come back. I think Angus has been the standout newcomer, apart from Tony Monk, obviously.
Okay.
But that goes without saying.
Yeah, because he's yours.
Yeah, and he's absolutely phenomenal, isn't he? Like, I think he's probably better than JJ, but...
Oh, okay, in terms of character perspective, I can kind of see it as like, I wouldn't class him as being better. I'd class him as, like, as I said last time, you're enjoying playing him.
Oh, mate, I am, yeah. Like, it's just fun, innit? Like, you don't have to take it too serious. And more often than not, he's probably going to lose, but it's just fun. I can imagine him, personally, I can imagine him being really over with the crowd. But in terms of that match, like I said, it was fun. I think everybody got a decent showing. Plague got the win, which I think, like I said, for me was the correct decision. I know I would say that on the booker, but like, not certain matches are tougher to call than others. For me, that wasn't a particularly difficult result to choose. If Helms had been back a bit longer, potentially,
maybe.
Yeah, he's already hitting it out the park again for me. I'm enjoying his promos again. And obviously I'm starting to work him into a story, which is what we'll get onto for last night's show. But I think it just having somebody like Angus Plague in that with a guaranteed title shot, at any of the mid cards, I think is an intriguing story.
It's kind of like a junior Money in the Bank. I mean,
it's Money in the Bank for any title that isn't a world title, which I quite like.
And speaking of briefly world titles, let's quickly flash forward. We're gonna have one less, aren't we? Coming up.
Yeah. Well, maybe depends what we'll go with, but yeah. We'll get on to that, but I'm very, very much looking to. I've said it before. We've talked about it on the podcast, and I think obviously you guys reading between the lines for a while. It's fun storyline, but you can't have 4 world champions forever. Like, it's just
definitely not.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm a massive boxing fan, and it's ridiculous having. I mean, they've got about 12 or something in each weight class, but like,
I think like 4. I think is it 4 or 5 recognized?
It's supposed to be 4 recognized, but then obviously they throw in like interims and fucking gold, silver, super international space champion or something like. So, but yeah, it's for me. There's a purpose. I know the storyline behind what we're doing, but there's absolutely no way you can run. I'd say any Fed. Most Feds I've been a part of since 2008. I think you can run with 2 at a push, but any more than that, you start to take the piss a little bit, really.
Yeah, I'm just going back onto Marty Helms then. I mean, it's a case of, this is such a refreshing take. It's just like, I mean, before he was literally just like, I'm just going to murder you. I'm going to murder you on the mic. I'm going to murder you in the ring. And then it's just like, after you're done, I'm still going to murder you again. This one is just like, it's considerate. I wouldn't say considerate. It's focused. It is just like, right, I know what I'm doing. You don't care what I'm doing. And I'm just going to concentrate my raising hell to certain little moments.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you pretty much hit that on the head in terms of. I was very happy when Marty came back and he kind of broached the subject of wanting to have a different kind of outlook, try something a bit different, which, yes, is always a gamble because we've very, very much just had Helms as a absolute nutcase, haven't we? From the
A murder
get-go.
machine.
Yeah, and that was fun. One of my favourite feuds ever was probably Helms and Cerberus, where it was just all about them. He was the only kind of person we ever portrayed as being able to stand up to Cerberus in a one-on-one fashion, which is great. But I think, as we discussed over PM, it's only so far you can go with that. And I think maybe it got stale for him. It got stale for the character.
I think you hit a point again that we just hit recently with Hardcore Hell. You took Helms and Cerberus to the point where it's basically just like, yeah, this is quite frankly ridiculous.
Yeah, it's done. You can't go further than where they went. I mean, we did. So Cerberus is Matt. His name's Matt, isn't it?
I think so.
The handler, yeah. Him and Ed are friends in real life. I think they. I mean, I feel sorry for Matt there, but yeah, they know one another. He's a really, really nice lad, and he always had this idea that he PM'd me. This was well in advance of the match I'm talking about, but he always said to me he had this idea for this match that he really wanted to see, which was basically like a Hell in a Cell, but the entire structure was made of glass, right? And I'm open to anybody's ideas. And I've had a few people PM me recently with ideas for matches. And what I will say is I will always listen and I will do my best, but there has to be a place and time. Like, I can't just introduce a match like that for no reason. So in the end, the Cerberus Helms feud was perfect for giving that a go. So we did. I think this was during or just before COVID. And it was manic, mate. Like, obviously, as you can imagine, it's a cell made of glass.
Yeah.
And you're right, though, from that perspective, you can't go further than that. Like, after that, where do you go? Like, you very much backed into a corner.
An exploding ring match? I mean,
yeah, you can't.
Everywhere.
It's hard because then you can't, in a month or the next pay-per-view, you can't have them go, oh, we're going to have a fucking 60-minute Iron Man match or whatever and showcase the wrestling abilities. I think some feuds, it had gone to the limit. Like, and I think even though Helms came out of that victorious, in some ways it might harm his character in terms of it's hard to know where to go from that direction. Like, he's just gone through hell with somebody that nobody else can beat. So in some ways, you booked into a corner because you kind of have to make him world champion after that.
Yeah, and then it's a case of who beats him and how much it take to beat him.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. It's not always easy to make these decisions because naturally want everybody to look strong. I do my best to give everybody a decent rub, but at the same time, in e-fedding, more so than even in real life, you can't, because it's unfair on everybody else. If there's like a character which is almost unbeatable, we've come close on a few characters, and you try your best for a while, but like I said, it's to know where to go. And as a promoer, so obviously Helms came back last year when we restarted, and we made him world champion at the same time as you. And I think he was he'd already hit the wall before we put the belt on him because of what had come before.
So he was going through the motions, spinning his wheels.
Yeah, I think he was struggling. Even, we finally put the belt on him properly, and it was like, where do you go with this character? It's quite difficult. And in the end, obviously, we had him lose the belt inside the Elimination Chamber. And it was easy to book from the perspective that, obviously, I think he took like nearly everybody's finisher, which was,
kind of like the scene. Oh God, was it Cena who took like 3 or 4 finishes?
Yeah, so we went down that route, which I think it was the fairest way to take the belt off him because it still made him look like an absolute badass. But I'm glad that he's come back with a different approach. I'm quite excited for it because, obviously we're just laying the foundations at the minute. But obviously I know where we're hoping to head, and I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, one of the things from a personal perspective, it's a case of I would have honestly liked to have seen back when I was champion, just me v Marty.
What do you like when you were both champions, or
Yeah, not title v title, just just a champion v champion match. Like Survivor Series did a few times.
Yeah, I think we've done it a couple of times in the past, and I hear you. And it's something I've thought about. It's hard sometimes, again, from a booking perspective. Like having one world champion go over another world champion.
I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I honestly could have made. Honestly, it's a case of it's the equivalent of like Brock Lesnar v Daniel Bryan. You just book that.
Yeah. And look, you can do it, and maybe we could have had that match. I mean, I think you and Marty do kind of click.
And I do have history with him.
Yeah, I mean, he usually smashes your head in, doesn't he? But
I think the last time was literally 37 seconds, and I've not forgotten it.
And this is the thing. Even the thing that I kind of like about him coming back now is we're portraying him a bit like a face, but come on, like
he's the last outlaw.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He can feud with literally anyone on the card because you can put him against faces and heels, and he's just a real do you know what? I can imagine. I get a good vision when I think of Marty, especially now. Very much like I said, Last Outlaw, sort of gunslinger-esque.
Oh God, I've just thought of it. He is literally Jeff Jarrett in AEW.
No, he's not Jeff Jarrett, man. Come on.
Jeff pulled off the Last Outlaw thing very well.
Jeff couldn't pull himself off. Like, he's fucking shite. And I'll go on record with that. I think he's one of my pet hates of wrestling. I think he's one of the worst things that ever happened to professional wrestling, Jeff Jarrett.
I'm going to disagree. Okay, his TNA run, yeah. His late WCW, yeah. But I think he's managed to redeem himself with his AEW stuff.
He'll never,
be honest.
He'll never redeem himself in my eyes. Like, that run in TNA is fucking appalling. Like, he should be ashamed of himself, especially with the talent they had at that time.
Honestly, I would suggest you go and watch the stuff leading up to last year's Owen tournament. God, that was good, Jarrett.
I mean, look, I get that because that's good storytelling. Obviously him and Owen were very close friends, and that kind of makes sense. But look, mate, I've been rewatching a lot of old TNA recently. And when you're watching a guy like Monty Brown, who's absolutely ridiculously talented, and you're just thinking to yourself, why isn't this guy the world champion in TNA? They've got AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, fucking Abyss, like at his peak, and you've got Jarrett in the most ridiculous, like I said, mate, I can't get on board, and fair enough, but I wouldn't compare Marty with Jarrett personally.
Well, I'd compare him with. I'm not saying TNA or WCW, AEW Jarrett. That's all I'm comparing him to.
Like, I don't know if you. Like, my basis of Marty Helms isn't even a wrestling basis. I think we talked this before. I take a lot of inspiration from other places, and a big thing that I love. I don't know if you've ever read them, the Stephen King series.
I know of Stephen King's infamously bad movies.
Yeah, well, I mean, his movies is like, but that's director's faults and stuff, and takes on his books because his books are phenomenal.
Stephen King was the director.
But anyway, regardless, right? He's one of the best authors. I don't care about his films. He's one of the best authors for me that's ever lived. And like his Dark Tower series, which is about the gunslinger, in sort of a post-apocalyptic world, is very much for me. That's Marty Helms. Like, he has bad tendencies at times, but I just think there's so much we can do with him now. Like, you can tell he's going to look like an absolute badass. He's walking around with this fucking leather jacket and his Undertaker style fucking... Like, he's like Clint Eastwood, man. That's what he's like. That's who he is. He's Clint. He's looking Marty Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Like, that's who he is. Dirty Harry. That, that's him. I love it. I honestly think if Marty sticks around and he's hitting the notes on the promos, like, we can go all the way again with him. 100%. Like, yeah, he's one of... I'm looking forward to him sort of getting stuck in, because I enjoyed writing him on last night's show.
And speaking of hitting the right notes, let's go to the 6 CWF Tag Team Championships. The Brothers of Seduction defeating the MVPs.
Yeah, probably I would say the most obvious result of the entire card.
I have to agree with you there. Literally, the first two must have been so easy for you to write as winners.
Yeah, I mean, this tag match, this is no slight. I've said this before, and I'll go on record again. Cult of Personality, who handles Mike Masters, is a very good promoter, in my opinion. He's just, he's quite sporadic, which makes it difficult for me. When he turns up, for me, he's hitting it, and then he doesn't hit it for a few weeks, so it's tough. Obviously, Gazzy disappeared. I've heard from him recently. Obviously, he came back on the board. He's been very busy at work. I always say real life comes first.
Yeah.
Respect that 100, but I can't obviously take a title off Liam and Marky, who have been phenomenal with the Brothers of Seduction. Like, and that was a no-brainer. It was fun. It was a fun match to write. They're very, very fun to write for, but also, showing that... I've said it before, I think, on most of these podcasts, it's very, very important for me to get them over as legit. Obviously, we did that at Born in Fire. I think we did it again on last night's show.
Yep.
Yeah, and obviously we'll get onto that, but these are a proper team now. Like I've said before, I think for me, already after sort of a 6-8 month run, or 6 month run, or whatever it's been, I think they're in a conversation. I'm not saying the best team ever. I wouldn't go that far yet, but
No, but they are a solid team. They're a solid team that can just... They are such a different spectrum to most of the teams I've seen as champions.
Yeah, and absolutely. And my thought process, obviously, I give you a little insight. Anytime I sort of bring a title back or whatever we do, so we brought the tag titles back, it's very important for me to kind of establish them in, sort of prestigiously, especially in the beginning. So that's what we did with the tag titles in terms of, we had the main event, a pay-per-view, a Beachfront Brawl in the Elimination Chamber. And then I think Percy and Perez have kind of taken them up a level after that.
They are just hitting banger after banger after banger.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, obviously, I know Marky and Liam are having fun with the promos. I can feel them on that the way I do with Tony Monk. I mean, Tony Monk and the Brothers, what a 6-man tag that'd be. Maybe we'll have to have a look at that at some point. But yeah, the lads are having fun, and I think that comes across in the promos. But like I said, they've got a serious side now, which is great. Which we needed that. We needed them to be legit, because that's kind of I say we needed them to be. I needed them to be, because that's my style. Like, when we go back and we look at the revised history of 6WF and stuff, this will come to the forefront, because I was very, very... I'm against shit characters. Like, I'm against using shit characters or in a poor way, and we'll discuss that. But I feel like in the early years of 6WF, etc., there was a lot of dead wood that should have just been cut. Like, there was no need for it. I don't like that in my shows, personally.
where do you personally see the MVPs going from here?
Well, obviously, like we've split them now, as was shown in last night's show as well. In terms of Mike Masters, obviously, we'll get on to the EWF match at Born in Fire, but he's joined Revolution now.
Yeah.
Which again for me kind of was a no-brainer. He kind of fits in with their mold. Jimmy Phillips is look, I like the character, I really do, but you know, Gazzy's busy at the minute, and I just don't want to. Thing is, if we keep him just active all the time, but Gazzy's not promoing, he's just going to lose match after match after match, and I just don't see the point in that. So,
yeah,
what we'll probably do, we don't even really need to do a storyline about it. I think, like they do in a real wrestling fed, Phillips will probably just go on the sidelines, and if Gazzy wants to bring him back, we'll repackage him or something and do something about it. But yeah, I think that their run was a bit of an experiment. It didn't work out. It's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really hit. It's a case of just, like you can ride them, but if they don't gel well together as people, it's like I don't know if you. I'm trying to think who you team somebody up with that just doesn't work.
Look, I think we've had it a few times in the past, like where you're right. We throw people together because you kind of hoping something might work. Like I said, I think I've teamed. It's not even necessarily the promos. Sometimes the characters. I think JJ had a brief run with like Chris Patricks as a tag partner or something, and the characters just didn't gel, so that was difficult. Or it's just one of them.
Yeah.
I think, it happens. It doesn't matter sometimes about the abilities of the handlers. It doesn't work. We tried that. It didn't work. It was a good win for the brothers, and they move on to something different now.
Yeah, I can honestly see them personal experience. I mean, just and slightly advanced, slightly giving slight spoilers. I can see them in like a possible war game situation.
Yeah.
But we'll get onto that a little bit later.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll discuss that. That's fine.
Let's move on to the number one contenders match, and I liked where this went after this. I mean, as in like, I'm trying to think. I haven't fully read through the show, but I didn't notice anything happening in regards to Max and myself. But I did like the fact that Chris won this.
Yeah.
The match in question is number one contenders match: Chris Patricks versus myself, with the special ref being Max Adamson, who fucked me over.
I mean, you say that, but the ending was deliberately sort of vague in terms of. So for me, I'll go on record and say this was probably one of, if not my favourite match on the card. I just think, again, we're talking about people gelling. Like, I think that Uryu and Patrick's characters just go really well together. Obviously, yourself and Deck, for me, knocked it out the park with the promos. We tied it all together. I think bringing Max in as the ref was a kind of will he, won't he, and then we threw in the number one contender stipulation, which added a bit more intrigue to it again.
I mean, from my personal perspective, it definitely did. I mean, just looking at, I think the last show, I went through all the options, or some of the options that I could see. And honestly, apologies. I didn't see the outcome that you've already put onto the next Aftermath. And I really
I was laughing at the time. Because it's the one match you didn't mention, and for me, as I explained in last night's show, it was the match that made the most sense because they have major history. And obviously a lot, some guys who weren't around back then didn't know, but these are two characters that joined pretty much 6WF at the same time. They were involved in an opening feud in 6WF as soon as they joined. So for me, it was logical to bring that almost full circle. We'll get on to that, yeah, but the match in question from Born in Fire, yourself and Patrick's, like I said, it was fun to write. It was, back and forth. I think both came out of it looking really good. Obviously, Patrick got the win, but he cheated.
Yeah,
And
he took
like,
advantage.
you go, mate.
He took advantage of a situation. Max shoves him out the way. I basically super kick Max in the face. He low blows me, and then just completely hits what moves did he hit on me?
Yeah, the puzzle solver. He hit the frog splash, didn't he? And
Yeah.
but this was, I think he hit a destroyer actually first. I think
it was destroyer. Then let me try and find it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was destroyer and then the frog splash, which was designed again to make you look good because it took a lot to put you down.
Yeah. So I'm still looking through the match card. I'm still looking through the match results here.
No, you're fine, mate. I'll just talk while you're looking, but kind of explain the deliberate vagueness of the finish in terms of the Max. As I tried to point out in the commentary, we're talking about two people who not only are best friends in terms of Max and Patrick's, but were tag team champions and a tag team for a long time. So it's not for me that Max, even though you as a character may think he screwed you over, for me it was more of a reaction, almost like muscle memory. He saw Patrick's in danger and he pushed him out the way. Like, it's almost like he forgot himself for almost a second. Like, they were back being a tag team or whatever. He shoves him out the way.
I'm just sorry.
No, go on, mate.
No, I'm just basically saying I'm looking at the card now. Basically, it is destroy. I get low blow, destroyer, puzzle solver, pen.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. It was deliberately so. That's why I think we had the discussion after you put up your promo, and obviously we've had a little talk. And last night's show has sort of presented you with a very, very new direction. I didn't, even though we will probably next week, we may or some point we're going to have a segment in the show between yourself and Max that kind of clears everything up. I didn't want you to sort of get bogged down.
Yeah.
Because that isn't obviously where your story's heading. I can understand even in a real life fed, you're gonna have questions after the finish at Born in Fire. But I think I'd already kind of alluded to, I don't want to do you and Max as a feud again. So not because it's not a great feud, because I think it is. And I think it's one of them we could always kind of go back to. But at the same time, I wanted to do something different. So I didn't want you to get bogged down in that detail. It was almost like, for me, the finish, whilst you got screwed over, the finish was more to enhance the Max Patrick storyline than it was to enhance your storyline.
Yeah, I mean, from my personal perspective, it's a case of I wasn't expecting me and Max. I was basically just expecting Max to continue. Max basically to come out, explain himself, like you remember when Daniel Bryan v HBK was a rumored match?
Was this a while ago?
This was HBK was the special ref for Orton v Bryan in the cell, I think, and the match after it. The Raw after it was basically Bryan basically putting Michaels in the yes lock, and that was considered the revenge.
Okay, I sort of remember it, mate. But all that, I'll be honest with you, that kind of era of WWE sort of all blurs into one for me. But
I was kind of thinking it would be something like that. It's like, okay, right, there's the revenge. It's a case of now I get to move on. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, the thing is, I just don't think it. For me personally, it's not. It's just not where we're going right now. Like, Max is still very much like, for me, he's a face. Like, you're obviously a face.
Yeah, after the aftermath, definitely.
Yeah, and I just don't want. I get what you're saying, and I get why it could be done. I just don't want. There's for me, there's no purpose behind any kind of physical altercation between the two characters right now, especially given that for me, unlike maybe what WWE were doing with HBK, like Max very much is the kind of guy like if you were to put hands on him, like it's on. Like
Yeah.
we're still very much in terms of obviously he's something like 6 months into retirement, but the way we portray him, he's still very much like good to go. And I'm not going to say whether he will be good to go or not, but certainly it's an option for us down the line. I know Marky's not against it, but I just
I was going to ask
in my head because I knew.
Oh, sorry.
Mate.
I was going to ask if he's up for it, would you do it?
What, for another Max Adamson match?
A match, a run, I don't know.
Oh yeah, absolute no-brainer, mate. Like he's a phenomenal character. I said, thing that we said, I think it was in the initial podcast or the second one, is that Marky didn't retire Max like I did. Like he didn't. It wasn't a case of he came to me and said, "I want to retire Max." Like I just ran with that story, and he was happy with it. Like, but it wasn't a kind of we had this sort of chat and a storyline. I kind of came to that conclusion myself, only because he had Rex, and it was kind of at the time I thought, well, we'll put Max away, but I don't know. For me, Max will never be. Max is almost a bit Undertaker-esque. Like, I'm not meaning portrayal, but at the same time, like, I feel like you could wheel Max out for Night of Glory or, for the big. Even though he's retired, like.
Yeah, I can definitely see Max being in that role. It's a case of he can. It's kind of like I don't know. I mean, I want to say like Ricky Steamboat kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I just think Max, obviously, we've talked about it before. I think I said in the initial podcast, in terms of overall guys, I think he's number one. Like, I think Marky is the best ever. That's not just on promo ability. That's as an all-rounder, I think he's, and I think in sort of storyline purposes, Max would have to be right at the top of the tree because he's won pretty much every title. So you're talking about a guy who, like I said, retired or not, next year's Night of Glory 10, which obviously is a major pay-per-view. Like, I'm not going to say he is, but if there ever was a time where, Max Adamson was going to have another match, we could certainly look at that.
For complete laughs, let's just book him against Goldberg. Goldberg's retirement match is against Max Adamson, and Max.
I mean, Marky would probably do that. He designed that himself, doesn't he? Like I said, this is the bloke that wrestled Jeff Brazier, who I would like to point out, actually, right, when you completely said that didn't happen, that Jeff Steele said it did, and he was called the Pocket Rocket on that wrestling show on ITV. I told you I didn't make it up.
I apologize, and like I say, that just completely slipped my mind. So I got no idea whether I didn't even know he existed.
I think you probably locked it away in the back of your mind because it was so piss poor, but it did happen, and I'd just like to say, everybody, that I was right.
Oh God! Speaking of, I'm not onto another random match. Let's have a look at the Daniel Riley, the EWF Global Championship. Yeah. Daniel Riley versus Dicey Riley versus Gazzy versus Jeff.
Yeah, great match. Great match.
I'm glad he retained.
Look, I think obviously I've been doing it for a long time, like the storyline, the build-up and the rumours and all the tweets and everything, and his contract running down. And maybe it was a bit of a giveaway. Or I don't know, maybe people thought it meant he was definitely losing. Maybe people felt he might have actually been leaving. But for me, obviously it's just a great. Again, it's not something I've ever discussed with Daniel. But I just think it's a fun. I've never done this storyline before. I don't know if this storyline has ever actually been done before in our Fed. Nothing's jumping out at me.
Not the Fed. I only know of one example in real life. Well, that's a couple of examples. I mean, you've got CM Punk leaving with the title, 2011. Yeah. You've also got this is going to be obscure. WWE ECW. Tommy Dreamer did this.
Right. Okay.
And he literally his contract ran out, but as long as he didn't run out as long as he was ECW champion.
Oh, okay.
This is going back to late, like mid '06, I think this is.
It rings a bell, but like it's quite an interesting concept, that one. So basically, he's got a deal until he loses the belt, and then he's gone.
Yeah, I think Mick Foley back in WrestleMania 2000 had a similar thing, although he didn't win.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, so this match was obviously my way of thinking in the booking of the match, in the build-up was obviously that all, I want to say 6CW originals. When I say that, I don't mean people that were probably there from literally day one, but near enough. Like they all joined within the first year of 6CW. So we had a lot to play off because they've obviously all feuded at some point or another. So that was an interesting concept. And obviously, as we've built on and we've seen last night's show with Dicey and Jeff, it was another way to sort of progress their feud issues, as well as the fact that I think it was meant open-ended, that anybody could win. Obviously, again, it was a shame with Gazzy that he wasn't around, but
obviously real life takes priority.
Yeah, of course, and you know, we always say that, and I get that 100, and I'm just glad that he's all right, and you know, we've heard from him, and he's doing okay, which is the most important thing. But obviously, it factored in to the match in terms of, so I can tell you, you may have assumed anyway, people may have read between the lines, but this match was supposed to lead into the return of Edward Plague.
Yeah, I'm wondering what happened with that, because it seems like you just dropped off. It seems like, I mean, it's just dropped off.
Yeah, so basically, we've been teasing it for a considerable amount of time. Going back to like the Elimination Chamber and stuff with when you and Gazzy were teaming.
Before that, even.
Yeah. And it was supposed to be that the Born in Fire match was, for me, it was an easy way to, you know, for Gazzy to be the guy that got pinned by Daniel Riley, by having Plague return.
Yeah.
But obviously Gazzy had not been around for a long time leading up to Born in Fire. Like, it was getting on for like 2 months or something, and I don't want to do a storyline. I spoke to Liam. Obviously Liam's been, you know, bedridden, held up with his leg, etc. But he was going back to work, and I didn't want to add to his workload, you know, because he's been doing a lot of stuff for us behind the scenes as well. So bringing Plague back would be more promos for him, which he had no problem with. But I'm not going to bring him back into this, for me, what is a massive story. And we need to almost have the final chapter with Gazzy and Plague. But if Gazzy's not around to promo, like, for me, we're not going to get the finish that we all wanted. So the ending of that match was kind of on the fly, in terms of the decision was then made to have Masters join Revolution instead. He was the person that helped Riley win instead of Plague, which works for where we're going with storylines now. It doesn't mean that the Plague Gazzy story is done, of course. Yes, we've kind of just put it to the side.
You want all the pieces together. We want all the pieces working together at the same time.
This is, mate, I'm a storyteller at the end of the day. You know, and I set a lot of store by that in terms of, you know, for me, everything has to fit. It has to fit together. And I've said before, like with shows going up late or whatever, sometimes I know it's annoying for you guys waiting, but I can't half-arse it. Like it needs to be in my own head. I'm not going to be happy unless it all makes sense. Now, for me, Ghazi and Plague is. I've put a lot of time and effort into that story, and it goes back. Thing is, some people may think it's just this run. It's not. Ghazi and Plague. Ghazi has been brainwashed by Plague. I think it was 2018 or something like that. This is like almost a 6-year storyline that needs for me, a definitive ending and also an ending that it deserves. And obviously, I'm not willing to do that. Kind of at a pay-per-view next month where Liam promos and Ghazi's not around or whatever. Like for me, it just doesn't make any sense.
No, I completely understand that. It's a case of like you need everything to come together for it to work.
Yeah,
and it's like I don't know. It's like describing it as like I don't know, a pasta dish. It's just like, okay, yeah, you got the pasta, you got the cheese, you got the sauce. It's just like okay, you want the pasta, cheese, and sauce all to work together, basically just to amplify themselves.
Well, that's it. They've obviously all put so much effort in. You know, Ghazi and Liam over the years with these characters and this story too. So they deserve it. They deserve it, and it's one of them where we want to look back and be able to say, "Oh, that storyline and the payoff and everything worked out." You know, it could be that we have to wait until I don't know Night of Glory, which again, it's not a bad thing because for me, it very much is a Night of Glory match, and it's you know, if this was WWE or whatever, it would probably make sense to have the payoff at like WrestleMania or something. But yeah, we'll play that by ear. Look, I like the Play character. I've said this to Liam. I would like him to come back. There's many good feuds we could have, but I just don't think, personally. Yes, there are ways and means of doing it, but I don't want him to come back into a feud to then sort of circle back around on the Ghazi feud. I think it makes more sense to wait and have the story finish with Ghazi before we move on to anything else.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the way you've been building it up, it's a case of, like, say, focus away from me and go on to Ghazi. I completely understand that. It's just like I can understand you waiting with it. I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, when it comes back to it, it will work.
Yeah, and that's it, mate. I think it's only fair. We've said this. The roster is very competitive. You guys are all great. There's so much going on right now that I think that potentially, because of Ghazi not being around at the minute, it has the potential to sort of get lost in the shuffle, and I don't think it's too big for that.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? There's too much.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, like there's fantastic things going on in the Fed at the minute, and I think because if it was Liam's only character, I may feel a bit differently. But look, he's got Wood, he's got Perez, he's got plenty to be going on with. So it's not like he's just treading water waiting for Ghazi, because you know we can bring Plague in as and when we need.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, it's just a case of like I say, obviously, real life comes first. Ghazi, it's completely understandable. It's completely understandable. Like I say, just keep. I hope you're okay.
Yeah. I've spoken to him. He sent me a PM and that, and he's fine. He's just been rushed off his feet with work, but this happens to us, so he knows. You know, I'm a massive fan of Ghazi as a character. I think he's a great lad. Doors are obviously open whenever he can come back and get stuck in full time. But yeah, for now, I said we've just got so much of a good stuff going on that you know we'll finish that story and give it the ending that it deserves. You know, when it works for everybody.
And speaking of endings that deserved, our fifth match, the 6th CWF European Championship, Perfect Jack versus Scott Harris. Thank fucking God he won. Perfect ending.
Yeah, well, I was obviously concern.
No slight on Jag, but obviously
No.
this needed more Harris.
I think there's a lot of factors to this in terms of I sort of alluded to it in the last podcast. You know, there's only so much time you can go along with the storyline of the nearly man or whatever, like, without it kind of becoming very repetitive. And I think it was the time to pull the trigger. And again, you're absolutely right. It's absolutely no slight on Jack whatsoever. I spoke to Jack about this. He's great. I think he's done fantastic with the new direction of the character. I think it was just necessary as well for storyline, for everything, for freshness. We're coming out of Born in Fire, which is one of the biggest pay-per-views. For some people, it's the biggest. I think it's important sometimes to come out of this show with fresh direction. Now, that's nothing against Jack, but what I mean is he gets pushed in a different direction, as we've seen from last night's show, to a degree, even though him and Harris are still intertwined. But Harris has got the belt, and that opens up options to us as well. And as you will have seen from last night, I think Harris having the belt with the storyline we're kind of playing around with now, it makes more sense for him to be the champion than Jack.
Yeah. I mean, especially with the Revolution chasing him down now.
Yeah, I think for me, Harris obviously champion, Steele's a champion, and it makes it intriguing in terms of, obviously, Dicey and Steele look like they're going to clash. Jack obviously wants a rematch with Harris, but then you've got Angus Plague, who has the freshest ball, which makes it intriguing because he can cash in on either of those championships as well. And can he really control Angus Plague? Do you know, we kind of tried to hint at that last night a little bit.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's just like a James Mitchell Abyss kind of thing.
Yeah. It's, again, I'm a big fan of the Angus Plague character, and we're having fun because I think the thing that makes him so different, especially in Revolution's kind of about wrestling ability.
Yeah.
That's kind of their MO and what they're all about, is that they're the best sort of wrestlers. And Plague, in reality, doesn't really. It's not that he's not a great wrestler, but he doesn't fit into their usual mold, which I find intriguing because it's like he's not really like them. And obviously, we haven't yet explored. If you remember, obviously, the way we've tried to present it is that Jack brought him to 6CWF. And we kind of haven't explored that story yet as to why or where he found him or anything like that, which is another layer which we will hopefully get onto.
Yeah, he definitely thinking about it more. He definitely screams like more Abyss-like in terms of story.
Yeah, I agree that. I think presentation-wise as well, he is. He's quite monstrous, isn't he? He's just not like them. They're very. I don't want to say they're not generic. What I mean is they're like. When I picture them, Masters, Riley, and PJ, it's like these are wrestlers. These are just out and out wrestlers. These are the best in the world at what they do. And then he's like the untamable monster.
I don't want it to be like this is no slight on him, but do you remember very early Abyss? I think he was managed by Kid Cash. And I'm going to have to bounce for a couple of seconds because I didn't catch any of that. I think he's picking up a delivery. So, but yeah, I think back in the early days of TNA, Kid Cash just kept hitting a chain link fence where Abyss would just come out from and then just interfere in matches.
Oh, really? I don't remember that.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome back. And also, yeah, he was managed by I think her name was Goldilocks. Like
Right,
she used
okay.
to, like very early days. It's a case of using Abyss to basically get managerial services of other people. So she got oh god, what's his name? Eric Watts, a couple of others as well. But my memory's a bit hazy on who else she got.
That was quite interesting, though, in terms of, yeah, like I said, Angus Plague, he doesn't fit into the mold of Revolution. But I think for me, that's kind of the idea. You know, that's what I'm trying to. He isn't what you would expect from
No, not
them.
at all.
Um, but I think, yeah, that's the whole point in terms of he's a great ally for them because he's obviously such a wrecking machine. But like at the same time, it's like when it comes down to the crunch or with titles on the line, is he really just gonna step aside for the rest of them? Like, I think
Yeah.
it's just one of them. I like having some intriguing sort of facets to every story, and I think that's a big one for that one.
One thing I've only just thought of, and I can't unsee it now. Do you remember a Raw match between the Big Show and Kane in like 2006?
Was that like the one that was just where they properly Matt wrestled each
In
other?
wrestling, yes. I think confused JR.
Yeah, I remember. I didn't see it live. I remember. I think it might have come up on YouTube or something. It was like,
Yeah, this is definitely a YouTube match.
and it's like you will not like this match is nothing like you will expect it to be, and it really wasn't. So yeah,
I can just imagine the Revolution doing the Plague going into a match and just doing that just to please the Revolution.
yeah, and I think we can obviously explore that. On topic of obviously we're talking about the Born in Fire match itself with Harris and Jack.
Yeah,
I think Harris deserves it. People are going to say, obviously me and Dale Saint were mates, but it's got nothing to do with that. I think Harris is a great character. I think again for the event it made sense. I think if that was a real show, the crowd would have been all over that. I think it was just one of them moments. I think he's a great choice with the belt.
yeah. I mean, with Harris, with the way you've set it up and all that, it's a case of if Harris didn't win this, I think he'd just lose momentum completely.
Yeah, that was my other concern was where do we go really? Like if Jack loses, we can have the rematch. He's got Revolution. He's got a lot going for him. But if Harris loses again, we've built him up so many times, and then obviously he loses. He most of the time loses in controversial fashion or whatever. But it's like you can't just keep doing that. You can't. So
No, not at all.
so let's have a look what he can do now. He's champion. It gives me a bit of fresh impetus, like to do something different with the stories. It gives Dale, something different for his promos. Sometimes, like I've said to you, it's not always about. I'm not saying that who was the better promoer. Like, I think it was a massive 50-50 feud. I think it could have gone either way. Jack's great, Dale's great, but I think for me, Harris needed the win. Like, needs more Harris, but I think Harris needed to win.
Yeah. Like I say, just going back on, just thinking about it now, it's a case of obviously Harris has been spinning his wheels so long, and now you've basically just gone, oh no, and you just let him go.
Yeah. And look, he's had so many feuds like over the last decade. But if we just go off last year when we restarted, he had the Eddie Kent feud, which was one of my favorite feuds. Harrison Kent was brilliant. Kent obviously came out on top controversially, but Kent got the world title and he went off and we know what Ed did there. He was brilliant. But then Harris was kind of was like we found his feet, so we brought Masters back. And obviously we ended their story, which was like 10 years in the making, and Harris won. So then you'd think he'd kick on from there, but then it was like just finding the right time. And I think Born in Fire, there was never a better time. The belt on the line. It was a story I've wanted to do for a while. You know, I think talking about characters that would gel, I always, in my head, I had the belief they would go well together. I think they did.
Yeah, they did pair really well together.
Yeah.
I think it might be one you could revisit in the future, but
Oh yeah, there's more legs to that. Like I keep saying with a lot of these feuds, and I've put it out in tweets and stuff, like I don't think every feud has to have back to back to back matches in terms of we can come back to stuff. You know, I think that's what we're trying now with a lot of these. Like, if you look at just Born in Fire alone, I wouldn't say, you know, some feuds culminated, but there are others that are still wide open, but they're not necessarily going to fight one another at the next pay-per-view. You know, it might be the one after that or the one after that. I think we can keep things open-ended with some of them.
And then we get to You Become a Tyrant. The TAW Heavyweight Championship, which was vacant at the time, which is vacant at the start. Asa versus yourself versus the Saint.
Yeah.
If I'm going into character for a second, fuck you. Going back out of character, this was nicely done.
I thought you were going to say fuck you again, out of character. Cause...
No. This was nicely done.
Look, it was... I'll go on record here. This was probably the hardest match for me to write for the whole show in terms of the result. I know people might think I'm taking a piss, but it was an extremely difficult decision, right, for me to come out of this show as a world champion. As I've alluded to many times before, it isn't... I know it's a bit of a taboo subject with e-fedding. Now, this isn't me putting the belt on myself because I think I'm the best. We all know I am anyway.
Bullshit.
But you know, Asa, I've said this, I've said it on podcasts, we've said I don't think probably anyone's been better. Certainly over the last 6 months. He's been phenomenal. And I think one of the first things I did post Born in Fire was PM'd him to apologise that he didn't win, and that I basically screwed him over. But I think from a storyline...
Yeah, sorry.
No, from a storyline perspective, and from where obviously I know we're going, and to progress the story to where it needs to be, it was the logical, in the end, after, believe me, a lot of sort of deliberation, I think it was the right result.
No offense to the Saint, but as I said at the pre-show, Saint wasn't winning this. It was either yourself or Asa, to be honest. And either result, I could see you doing what you did in Aftermath with either result. You win, you become a complete tyrant. You won, you've become a complete freaking tyrant. If Asa had won, I could see you basically going, oh, fuck this, and just raising hell for the hell of it.
Yeah, so don't get me wrong, obviously from last night's show and stuff, we may have been able to, well, I say may, we would have been able to get to the same position, regardless probably of the outcome.
Yeah.
But I don't know, for me, yes, you can say, you know, maybe there's a bit of self-indulgence, you know, so it's a world title. You know, I'm obviously happy, but it isn't a world title, like in the truest sense of the form, in terms of like, I'm just doing this to further a story.
Yeah.
That's the main purpose of what we are doing here. Now, don't get me wrong. I've said this before, whether it sounds egotistical, I do think I'm good at promoing, like when I can. And, you know, that kind of goes right back through the test of time. before I was a booker, obviously other bookers agreed. That's why I won world titles, etc. Like, it's always been one of them kind of things. And yes, maybe when you talk about deserving a world title, I don't want to sound really deluded, but obviously not just in promo and stakes, but I've given a lot, obviously, like, to running this Fed for a long, long time. So for me, you could say, oh yeah, it's a little pat on the back. But it's not about that. It really is about this story. Now, it was fundamental coming off the back of that show. And I'd spoke to Asa in the run-up, because we designed a lot of this story, like, through PMs and stuff like that, with Saint and stuff like that. And it was imperative that JJ was viewed as an absolute piece of shit once Born in Fire was over. I think we achieved that. Obviously, in being walked out,
especially with the post-match segment.
Yeah, obviously it helped. Obviously, being walked out by Donald Trump,
Air
and
Force
all
One.
that. Yeah, exactly. And it was just, that was what the aim was. The objective was to establish me and Saint now as the ultimate heel. And I think we are. Like, I think that goes without, yeah, and I think that goes without saying that what we wanted to achieve, we have achieved. And that for me is the main purpose of why we did it. It's not about winning a world title, or it's not, for me, the title is secondary.
Yeah, the story is primary.
It's not secondary to Ace's character. Like, it's very much why he's in the Fed, isn't it? But for me, now we've taken a story that has been sort of simmering, and it's exploded now, and it's probably, well, after last night's show, it's probably one of, if not the biggest story currently on the roster. And yeah, so it was tough. Obviously, we did everything to make Asa look as strong as possible at the Born in Fire match, which I think he did, because it was effectively a handicap match.
Yeah.
Me and Saint didn't lay a hand on one another, which was always the intention. Obviously, people thought we might, and that was kind of what we alluded to in promos, But the idea is that we are as one. So it was just a 2-on-1 match, and I think Asa did fantastic. He looked fantastic, and in the end, he was ultimately screwed over by my fictional wife.
Honestly, I seen this initially. Sorry,
I
honestly could have seen this as basically UV Asa with Saint as ref.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, I don't think you really want two special referee matches on one card.
Well, that's what was a big telling factor in terms of, I think we've talked about it earlier, but I think Max as the referee made sense in your match, and yes, it would have made sense to have another one, but I don't really like sort of repetition in a pay-per-view. So whilst, yes, probably a lot of people thought Saint's not going to win, that's no slight, as Dale knows, on him or Saint, because he's one of the best ever. I just think, obviously, him being in the match, for me, it was a kind of, I mean, we could have swerved it. Like, that was he could have helped Asa win, or he could have taken the belt for himself and just been playing everybody, but again, that's not the storyline we're telling.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it now, but it's a case of, with the way you built it up, it's a case of that wasn't an option at all.
No, and like I said, you're right. There was probably two main outcomes, and obviously Asa winning in front of his own fans was, logical, but at the same time, it was logical to get us over as the power trip heels to screw him over in front of his own fans. Like, that was the big thing for me, because it was in London. For me, it made sense. Like, it made sense to screw him.
Yeah. You can't have every match a major show, but basically just be happy time, happy time, happy time, happy time.
Well, I think I said this I think I said this in the last podcast, mate. I think not every pay-per-view, not every pay-per-view and not every match, and even the big shows like WrestleManias or whatever, not every match is happy or is the definitive ending. Like you've said before, like Roman beating Cody, in the first match, was obviously a massive one. Obviously, Matt Hardy beat Jeff Hardy, didn't he? At WrestleMania.
I
Sometimes
thought that was Jeff beating Matt.
no, Jeff won the I Quit match at Extreme Rules, but Matt won the match at.
Oh, you're right.
WrestleMania.
Yeah, I got them flipped round.
Um,
Yeah, because Matt was tied to a table.
yeah, and this is what I mean about you can't have every single. That's not the way you tell a story, is it? Like, especially not in wrestling or TV shows, mate. Like, you can't just have the good guy win every single time. It's dull. Like, the whole point of the story is that the bad guys sometimes they win, and that's how you build.
You want to make the bad guy seem like a bad guy, bad guy with skill.
Exactly, and this is where you've got to remember. We've got X amount of characters on the roster. We've got a near enough an even split of heels and faces, but it's my job to ensure that not every single heel and not every single face is portrayed in the same way, because it'd be boring. So therefore, but you're right, with a heel, not every heel is like dastardly or just like cheats to win. Sometimes you've got to have a dominant heel in terms of, so then that's what we did with, say, Marty Helms, right? In his initial run, he was a heel, but he was dominant. He didn't really cheat to win. He just smashed everyone to pieces. That's how good he was. But then sometimes you've got to have the heels that cheat every time or whatever, like. And I think, yeah, that's kind of with the JJ and Asa storyline. Obviously, we've screwed him over. We've cheated. And now that, in my head, that's like, now, if I was a fan watching that, I'd be like, oh, JJ can't beat Asa, like, without cheating or whatever. Because obviously Asa had the match won otherwise.
Yeah.
So now you want to see it. You want to see Asa beat JJ. And after last night, with yourself involved, like, more and more as the weeks go by, the fans are going to want to see JJ get his head absolutely booted in.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I mean, speaking of people getting their head beaten in, 25 years in the making, Liam Wood versus Thunder.
See, again, love this match, right? I think I said on the last podcast, this match can headline a pay-per-view. Easy. It's a headliner, even without a title. It shows how stacked our roster is. I think Liam and Thunder did a really good sort of co-promo.
Because that was posted up not like a day before we did the last show.
Yeah, I think they did really well with that, and it shows obviously their abilities. And again, going back to just what we were discussing about every match and things being different and storyline progression. So we get on to the end of this match, and obviously, you see it in real life, people always whinging about like a DQ finish or whatever at a pay-per-view, but sometimes that's exactly what you need. Like,
and this definitely this worked with it brilliantly.
Yeah, and I agree. Obviously, I'm going to agree because I wrote it, but at the same time, like, this was in discussion with Liam and Thunder. We talked about the best way in order to progress the story, take it forward. I think this does it perfectly because, yes, Thunder's won, but it still blurred the lines because, like I said, I don't think there's a definitive heel face. And obviously we'll get onto last night's show again soon. I think that continued to blur the lines. I think Liam's obviously, I'd say, is probably a 70-30 split right now. Like, he is probably coming at it from more face value. But Thunder's going to have his fans because the whole point of this story, if, for those sort of keeping up with it, is that Thunder is only against Liam. He hasn't said anything about the fans. He won't say anything about the fans. He's got no problem with the fans. She's obviously got no problem with Emmy, as we saw last night. It's just about him and Liam. Now, this is more real. I think this is more of a real life kind of feud. Some people are going to side with Liam. Some people are going to side with Thunder. I think what we did in that match at Born in Fire was we gave them X amount of time, first of all, to showcase their wrestling abilities, which they did. It's really good, and I enjoyed writing it. Then, as soon as the referee was out, they just sort of started bashing one another around.
And then the end was basically Liam going, sod it, and twatting Thunder with a chair.
Yeah, and I think that was the whole point, was in the build-up, and this is what I talked about with the guys, was Thunder was basically saying that Liam was weak in terms of he was easy to manipulate, and he proved it in some ways. Like, so Thunder had said about like Liam's feuds with Engel and Costello, and how he always resorts to that kind of violence. And he obviously was proven right again at Born in Fire. Liam got himself, he couldn't handle the emotion, maybe. That's what way we look at it, and he got disqualified.
And then you've got the aftermath results with Emmy and Liam basically just...
Yeah, so we did a bit sort of Jericho Michaels-esque, but a twist on it, because it wasn't a heel punching her in the face. Basically, our own partner elbowed her in the face. It's what I think I've said to you before when we've swapped messages and stuff. Like, I do borrow ideas, but I try and twist them. I didn't want fun. Again, it's imperative and important that Thunder doesn't, like, we could have had Thunder hit Emmy, and that would have obviously give fuel to the fire of Liam, but then that pretty much puts Thunder as an out and out heel, and that isn't what we're trying to do. That's kind of important to the story.
You're trying to keep a delicate balance with it.
Yeah, you know, it is important, as people will see as we continue and we progress. But it's important that we don't just go, this is the face, this is the heel, and that's it. Like, you can't deviate from that. Like, that isn't what this feud's about. Some feuds are very much, it's easy, it's very black and white. You're a face, you're a heel. And a lot of your feuds are easy to do like that, mate, because I feel like you're very much in the face spectrum.
I'm Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah, so it's really putting you against heels, like, is really easy to do, because it just blends really well. In saying that, obviously we put you with Patrick's, who was kind of blaring the lines, and I think that worked really well too. But yeah, with Liam, because Liam's not a face, like, Liam's another, like, ultimate sort of tweener, isn't he? He always has been. The stuff we've done with Liam in the past, and I don't know if he can ever go back to being full blown face, because he smashed Gazzy's head in front of Christy and all stuff like that, like, and he basically threatened Christy during a I Quit match, which got Gazzy to say I quit. Like, Liam's dark, like, he's being a dark character, very dark. We can't ever really get him to be, he's not going to be Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky and the fans, wearing his fucking coloured t-shirts and stuff like John Cena. Like, we can't do that with him now. So, again, me and Liam, we kind of have talked about this. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but Liam Wood is like the Punisher. That's what we're going with him. That's where. So, like,
well, depends on which version of the Punisher you mean. I'm thinking the 90s Spider-Man cartoon one, which I can kind of get with him.
Oh no, we're talking about the Marvel sort of, well, my basis is of, like, the show. Have you seen the recent show? I say recent, like,
not.
On Netflix. Well, I don't know I think it's on Disney now, but it is phenomenal. It's that guy John. I can't remember his surname. He's in, like, The Walking Dead and shit.
Another show I've not seen.
Right, but he's a really, really good actor. Anyway, basically, so the idea with him is that he's like a bit of a tortured soul, and he fights bad guys, but like he isn't a good guy. Like he does a lot of horrible shit,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
mean,
kind of like what we do with Liam. Like I think that's kind of important. Sometimes there's kind of a reasoning behind why he does it, but he's so unpredictable now. I think that's like with Liam, you get him in the ring. There's a whole host of people in the ring, and he's taking everyone out, faces, heels. Like that's kind of where I see him now.
yeah, I can kind of understand that. But going back to a thought just out of the past few minutes,
Yeah.
you know how you're saying with like real life, like blurring the lines and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd safely argue that you've had 2 matches like that on this Born in Fire. I mean, how do you think they did? I mean, do you think they differ in their own ways, or is it just up to the people you put in them, basically saying, right, make this different, make this stand out?
So, which two matches are we highlighting? So, Wooden Thunder and
Patrick's and myself, because you
right, yeah, very different, mate. In my perspective, and I'll try to explain what I think and why. So, yourself and Patrick's is fundamentally, I guess, on the face of it, for want of a better word, face versus face. Although we've kind of been having Patrick slowly. Is it a heel turn? Well, you have to wait and see on that. But obviously, it looks like he's being slowly corrupted by Damian Andrews. But there was reasonings behind what he said. Now, that's not against you, but I like the fact when the people promo, like, there's truths to it. So Patrick's did come back just for Max. Like, he did to help him against Genesis. And
yeah,
so you can't fault him on that. Like, everything he said about that was true. Like, he did come back for Max, and obviously nobody else did help Max, but it's not that you didn't offer, because you did. We made sure we had the promos where you'd offered to help and stuff, but Patrick's is ignoring all of that. But I think it's a different story in terms of, like, you and Patrick's history is, whilst you both have alliance with Max, is still kind of fresh. The Liam and Thunder thing is very different because we're talking about people who, in story, in real life, have been friends for a long, long time. So the way we're trying to come at that is, if that was like in your friendship group, that would divide people, I think, pretty much down the middle. Like, if I had 2 mates and, like, all of a sudden they weren't, like, they'd fallen out, that's going to split my like, I'm going to be like, how do I feel about that?
yeah,
Who do I side with? You both make fairly good points. And Thunder's point that he's been trying to point out again in his promos is that, like, he is always kind of bailing Liam out. And we've done this in a few times. We've used the character without Thunder coming back properly. When we've always made sure to get his permission on this, but we've used his character at times to kind of come in and help Liam out. And yet Liam always seems to end up in the same position. So I think they're different, but at the same time, they're different rivalries, different stories. But I think it's a kind of still a play on my style and what I'm trying to do, and a development of my style over the last few years is I do try and bring a lot more realism into it. I think your feud was good for that, and it was an easy write. I think with Liam and Thunder again, we're kind of doing a realistic. It's real. It's not, because at the end of the day, it's wrestling, mate, and it's pro wrestling, and we dress a lot of these feuds up. But for me, that one's just a real feud. I don't think we need to. You could just have a fight, like you could just have no rules, unsanctioned fight with them two, or what did they call it in AEW, or like a lights out match or something.
lights out match, yeah.
I think that makes sense now for the Liam Thunder story. I think that's kind of where they're at.
Yeah, my initial thought was basically just like, because you're getting characters that are blurring the lines. I mean, like say Patrick is calling me out for basically not being a hero, for basically being a fake hero. I'm just like, okay.
I like to blur the lines, though. I mean, you say them 2 matches, but I think a lot of our stories now kind of blur the lines. In terms of, we have on the roster some very, very definitive faces and very, very definitive heels. But I think there are a fair number of characters who blur the lines now. Obviously, we'll come on to the next match in a minute on the card, which I believe is another one that blurs the lines of, because you could, in the Hardcore Hell match, for me, you can't call either of them a good guy. Like,
no, you can't.
And I think even in the main event, we establish obviously Rex and Kent as face and heel, but I think Eddie Kent and Genesis, for me, they're so over that there would be people cheering Genesis, and cheering Kent.
Like the Razor, they're like basically a group of Razor Ramones.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at. Like Genesis, in my head, and obviously through their longevity and stuff, they're almost like that DX in a way level of, and this is a reimagined idea. This is Ed's done fantastic with his new vision of Genesis, but for me, they'd be so over that, and I think their merchandise, they'd be big sellers. I think, there would have been, and you've got, the section of what do they call them, smart fans or whatever. I believe at Born in Fire, there would have been a section of fans who wanted Eddie Kent to win and were cheering every time he came close. That's the way I seen it in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the blaring lines because we're, at the end of the day, people are multifaceted, and multi-layered, and I think that's important to get across that. It's not as simple. Anyway, it's not the 1980s wrestling, as it were. Hulk Hogan saves us from the bad people from Iraq or whatever, and
yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's a point where basically you're just blurring everything for the sake of blurring. That's what I'm thinking about.
But obviously you've got to be careful. But at the same time, I just think it's anything you watch, or any media, or any films, or even just real life experiences, there's very little people who are just solely good, or solely bad. I think it's easier to be solely bad than it is to be solely good. I think that's difficult to paint somebody as whiter than white. It's very, very hard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gone.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm good. Just lost the train of thought I had for a second.
So where are we up to?
We are back. Well, we may as well discuss the Hardcore Hell match itself. I mean,
yeah,
I like the fact, looking at the ending here, it's a case of what you wrote is basically, I'm not sure anyone is victorious here tonight. Even though Blue Dragon won, I don't think he did.
Yeah, and I think that was, I can't remember the exact wording of what I put last night.
I've got it here. But RJ, but did he win? Really? I'm not sure anyone is victorious here tonight.
Yeah, and I think that's why, obviously, when we get onto last night's show and the Blue Dragon Patrick's, I mean, Blue Dragon's beyond beat up. He's fucked, really. Even though he came out a winner, the kind of long-term damage that he suffered, and it was the Hardcore Hell. What we talked about in the build-up and stuff, we talked about in the last podcast, and it was tough because I'll be honest, I'm not a massive. It might be hard to believe from the writing, but I'm not a massive sort of deathmatch sort of fan, and that style of wrestling, and if you can call it that, and you see all this sort of backyard fucking nonsense, and
I mean,
people. Go on, mate.
I can see that, like, say, I'm not into like CCW type stuff. I mean,
No.
the ECW, there's like, okay, there's a point, there's a purpose to it in the most part.
Yeah, no, and there is. There is a purpose to it all, but for me, it's just not like I'm not into it. So that made it quite difficult, I think, when we were writing it.
Is it a case of basically how far you wanting to go, or is it a case of are you just basically trying to balance your sensibilities versus what the match needs?
Yeah, well, I think it's. I don't know if you remember, there was a time where I think it was about 10 years ago or something. Might be a little bit less than that. They did a storyline where it was along the lines of it was getting too violent. I don't know if you remember.
I honestly don't at the moment.
And basically, like the shareholders and stuff, and the sponsors put a lot of pressure on. It's quite a fun story from that perspective, but they wanted to tone it down, and I think it tied in because at this time we had a lot of people sort of writing the matches, like people helping out, and
yeah,
I think a lot of the extreme matches was, I think they started to borderline on the ridiculous. To be honest, I don't want to slight anyone because I'm always appreciative of the help, but it was getting. I'll be honest with you, mate. There's a couple. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but if you went back and read, there was a few where it was. This is fucking outrageous. Like, it just wasn't believable from my perspective.
kind of like how Abyss with like Janice, that stupid like board with nails in it.
Right, yeah, and it was like they were writing matches, and then they'd suffer so much damage, but like in the next sequence they were up, and I was like, that's not real because that would never happen. And again, I think that was what was important with the Hardcore Hell match, was that we had to bring a little. I know it's hard to believe, but a sense of realism to it, because obviously they're like animals, but we try to have.
Oh god, was it like WCW that did all the flippy stuff, and it's just like, okay, next spot, next spot, next spot, next spot, next spot.
Yeah, and it's not real, is it? It's not realistic. So whilst we presented them as obviously larger than life and being able to sustain a lot of damage at the same time, and I think that was the point of the ending. I was actually really happy with the ending because I thought it was very, very brutal, but very simplistic. Instead of having like, I don't know, some mad spot where they did a fucking Canadian destroyer from the top of the cell through like, I don't know, Shark Tank or
yeah.
Like, it was just very, very physical. But the ending, there was no weapons involved. It was just him just smashing his brother's head in with his forearm was kind of the whole point. And it was just for me, it was almost like a drawing of a line in terms of we're done with that now. And
yeah.
I don't mean the story itself or them never facing one another, but I think we talked about it on the last podcast and stuff. I think we have to sort of dial it back for a bit now. I think that's as far as you can go with that level of violence, personally.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Speaking of endings, though, if we jump to the very last segment, many hours after Born in Fire, because this, I feel, relates to it.
All right, yeah, okay.
What's going on here?
Yeah, well, there was a bit of confusion, wasn't there, when I put this up? I think it was it Mark? I think he was baffled at first.
Yeah. Like I say, I read it, it's just like, okay. But like I say, just for clarity's sake for the listeners, Backstage, we've got a little backstage segment after the main event where Logan Kincaid is shackled somewhere, and apparently, Damian Andrews has shown up head to toe in tribal tattoos, declared himself, "I am the Blue Dragon," and then snarls.
Yeah.
And that's how the show ends. So, if you just like to explain it to the listeners, what's going on?
I'll do my best. I mean, if I can't explain it, nobody can. But so originally, what I'll say is, and I'm glad that I was correct in my assessment. I think Lee and Craig backed me up on this, thankfully. So the whole thing is that Damian Andrews is the original Blue Dragon, like, because the Blue Dragon is a moniker of in their tribe/crime family, right? Being the Blue Dragon means you're head of the family. It's like being the tribal chief or whatever. It's that's the top guy. The top guy is the Blue Dragon, and the only way to become the Blue Dragon is trial by combat. And so Damian Andrews was the Blue Dragon because he was the head of the family. And this is going back, I mean, this is like way before. This is the storyline I remember Craig telling. So Logan and Dragon have got different mums, but Damian Andrews is their dad.
Yeah.
And so Damian Andrews was a piece of shit. Well, I know that's not hard to believe. To Blue Dragon's mum. I'm not sure if she didn't end up passing away or something because of what he did to her. But anyway, so BD absolutely destroyed Damian Andrews. Like, he just beat him senseless. Like, this is before 6WF and everything. And that's how he became Blue Dragon. He took the mantle off his dad. And he destroyed him. And then the story goes, Lee and Craig can fill in the gaps or tell me if I'm wrong, but the story goes then, so at this point in time, he didn't even know of Logan's existence, right?
Okay.
Then Logan joined 6WF. If you remember, he was called like the fucking captain or something like that. And
oh god, yeah.
He was in a tag team with you.
Yes, Team Watercooler forever.
Yeah, you became the tag champs and all that. And then the storyline was built that basically somebody revealed, and I think it ended up being Damian Andrews back from the grave or whatever, because BD thought he'd killed him or something, I think. Revealed that they were half brothers. But Logan being the elder brother, basically Damian Andrews was sowing the seeds back then that he was the rightful Blue Dragon. Therefore, that's why they feuded.
Yeah.
Originally in 6WF. But for whatever reason, I don't know why, because I wasn't involved in the booking of 6WF at that time. I don't believe the moniker ever passed on to Logan, despite the fact that he definitely did win that feud in 6WF. So Blue Dragon remained. He's got the moniker anyway. So anyway, long story short, I haven't cut it that short, but anyway,
Damian Andrews basically thinks was not officially beaten in combat, so he still believes he is the Blue Dragon.
Damian Andrews,
the actual Blue Dragon, who is the current World Heavyweight Champion.
Yeah, Damian Andrews wants to be the man. He wants to be in control. Basically wants revenge on his son. He obviously tried that by manipulating Logan to go after BD again. Yeah. That obviously hasn't worked this time. Or it has. It has and it hasn't, hasn't it? Because Dragon's obviously won, but he hasn't won. He's in a bad way. And now obviously Andrews has manipulated Chris Patrick to go after Dragon now. It's all part of the storyline. But yes, so as far as I can clear up, I think we've talked about this before. I don't think you've ever watched Lucha Underground, have you?
No, I haven't.
I would recommend it to anybody. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. But what they do is the idea behind what they do, and it's hard, you can't really do it from an e-fedding perspective. But so when you're watching the show on Lucha Underground and you see a backstage segment, the commentators aren't aware of that backstage segment. It's like a scene out of a TV show. So they don't know that stuff's happening, but us as a viewer, we know that it's happening. And that's kind of what I was doing with the Damien Andrews thing. So you all obviously need to know what his plan is, and that's why I showed the segment. But I'm not directly mentioning it in the shows themselves, because the kind of idea is that nobody's actually seen that take place.
It's kind of like Shakespearean almost, you know, when the characters usually.
Yeah.
Oh God, who did? What's the one with Kevin Spacey?
Shakespeare one?
No. They did this recently with Kevin Spacey, who would speak to the audience. Frank Underwood.
Right. Okay.
You know the show I mean.
House of Cards.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I haven't watched it, but it's meant to be phenomenal.
I've not watched it, but I've seen the scenes where basically he just turns to the camera and speaks directly to the audience.
Yeah, so it's a bit like that. It's a bit like that in terms of, so we have all seen it. Okay, we've all seen the fact that that is his true intention. That he is, we've basically pulled back the curtain, like you said. Like, his true intention is to become Blue Dragon again or whatever and get revenge on BD. But nobody in the actual show, like us as viewers, we know that's happened, but nobody involved in the actual show knows that that's happened. I know that's complicated, but in my head it makes sense.
No, I get it. It's like a case of you're telling the audience something that they need to know when everyone else just has no idea.
Yeah, and so then obviously when he's interacting with all these people on the show, like Max, and obviously we've hinted at, like, so for example, the segment with Marty Helms where he's gone in to see Max, and we'll talk about the last night's show, but saying, basically alluding to the fact that he knows more about what's going on than Max does. And this is kind of what we're doing. Max obviously isn't aware of that segment at the end of Born in Fire, but yes, us as a viewership, we know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be probably cleverer than I am, mate, but that's kind of the intention, yeah.
You kind of worked it well. I mean, taking something that you didn't fully understand, admittedly, you didn't fully understand, and running with it. I think you've done really well with it.
I think it's just for me, I think we talked about it before, it's a big thing for me is storyline. For everybody, it's not just, I like intricate storylines, and it gives us everybody a lot to work with. And I think that's what we'll get on to, obviously, the old shows. I know that's part of this podcast that we'll do a bit later, but for me, it was something that was not always, but at times it was lacking in the. That's no slight. Like, we've developed now as a Fed, but in the early days, sometimes I think there wasn't a lot of meat on the bones of the stories.
Well, everyone has their own styles. I mean,
yeah, of course.
Obviously, different bookers have different ways. I mean, I don't know how I'd do it if you put the gun to my head, but I would probably book that slightly differently to what you did.
Yeah, of course you would, and of course I'm open to that. Like, everybody's like you said, everybody's different, got different outlooks, different opinions, and that's why we've had a lot of different things over the years, which is not a bad thing because we've had a lot of different people in charge. That's by no means saying my way is the best or anything, or my storylines are always better than everyone else's. Would never ever say that. I just think I have a different way of coming at it than other people. That's just the style you get when obviously I'm booking the show.
And obviously your job as booker, you get different ideas from different styles of people. So it's just like, not all of them work, but it's a case of, I like that.
And I obviously hold up my hands to that. I'd like to think I've got a fairly high success rate, but I've got plenty of feuds where I think, or stories, etc., where I think it really hasn't quite worked out the way I'd like it to. And that's just trial and error. Like, you put people together, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes my ideas work, sometimes I don't quite pull them off. I'll admit that. Like, it's just the way it goes.
Well, like I say, let's get into a final match.
Yeah.
Eddie Kemp versus Rex Adamson.
Uh-huh.
I like this a lot. Just the way it just flowed.
Yeah. I think for me, it was, when I say perfect, that's not just about my writing. I think I would like to get that across. It's about everything was perfect. For me, it's the perfect match. It's the perfect story. I've said this, I think I said on the last podcast, it's now my favourite story ever. It's overtaken the original Genesis story. I think everybody involved was phenomenal from start to finish. And you hope, because we've never wrote a Rex Kent match before, we've wrote the whole story, but they've never. So when it come down to actually writing them against one another, and I think you can see the styles of the stars themselves, they do very much fit together. I think it flowed really well. I think everything about it made sense. The right person won.
Definitely the right person won. I'm sorry, but Jesus, I think Rex deserved to win.
I think this is, again, you come back to every match. When I say the right person won or X person deserved to win, that's not a slight on the other person. Like, I've said this about Ed. Ed knows. I think Ed's phenomenal. I think he's a top guy, top lad. His contribution to the Fed as a whole, not just as a promoter, is second to none.
There is an exception to this rule, and that is the one question that we will not bloody answer of is no.
Because I've already got an answer for it, because I wrote an answer, but I'll answer it. You don't have to answer it. But we'll get on to that. But yeah, his contribution is like I said, his enthusiasm is so infectious. Like, I think everybody's great, but his feedback is always brilliant. He gives me so much to work with, and he deserves that record, the record world title run. It was brilliant, but obviously Marky's exceptional. He has been from day one, and the Rex Adamson character might just be his best ever.
It'd be interesting to see where he goes from this, though.
And I think obviously we're going to get onto next week's show. This is what you have to understand from a booking perspective. I'm not saying you don't understand, or nobody does, but what you have to understand is that whilst I believe it was the right decision and Rex becoming champion is great, the hard work kind of starts from this point for everybody involved, because case in point, one case in point, but there's many. The big sort of moment of Rey Mysterio winning the world title at WrestleMania 22, which obviously was, let's be honest, it was pushed through the tragic passing of Eddie, and it was a fantastic moment. Should have headlined, really.
What was the main event? What was the main event at 22?
Triple H and John Cena.
Oh God.
Yeah, so Mysterio winning the world title should have ended WrestleMania. However, after that really feel good moment, they didn't have a fucking clue what to do with him. Like, and
did he lose like all his matches?
Yeah, it's one of the worst booked world title runs probably ever.
I think he lost all of his singles matches to bigger guys.
Yeah.
Trying to think. I think his first feud was JBL. Then he lost it to King Booker thanks to Chavo.
Yeah. It was. That's what I mean. You get this massive moment, and it's like, all right, yeah, sound. But it's where you go from there. So that's obviously my job now.
I honestly want to see where Marky goes with this, to be honest, more than anything.
Well, Marky can go anywhere. Like,
no, but I mean, in the case of, I'm not knocking him. Does he because, like I say, Max has been champion as a face, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Does he retread old ground, or does he go somewhere completely different? That's what I want to look at. That's what's got me curious more than anything.
I think he goes somewhere completely different. I'll be honest, even in my head, thinking about where he may or may not go, because they're so different. Like, there's similarities between the characters, but like for me, they're so different in terms of like the booking and everything. It's so weird when you look back. Like, I'm a big Max Adamson fan, but he was booked for so long. If you remember, well, you probably do because you were feuding with him, or you were tied to him for quite a decent portion. But a lot of the time, like he was kind of even though he was a massive guy, he was quite a dastardly, just like cheating heel. Like he used to cheat to win a lot of matches, and given his size and stuff, I'm not sure whether that was the right booking of him or not. But he was so good at it. He was almost like an Australian Eddie Guerrero in a way, like, and I think that's why he got over as a face later in sort of his EFED career.
Yeah,
But Rex for me is like a hybrid of Batista meets Bron Breaker slash fucking whoever you want, mate. Like 2002 Brock Lesnar. I think that's kind of what we've done with Rex. He is like he's the Goldberg aura. And because that aura that he had in WCW was unrivaled. But you know, obviously his wrestling ability was shite, but and always was and always has been. But his aura was second to none. And I think if you combine that with I've never seen anything. I've said this before. I've never seen anything like O2 Brock Lesnar. Like, I don't think we'll ever see anything like O2 Brock Lesnar ever again. And that's kind of how I've tried to book Rex. Is he's just an absolute. He defies belief. Like, I think that's what's so important with him is that he's just. And I think that yes, there's pressure on me, maybe Marky to a degree, but I think there's so many ways we can go with him. And I do think he's got scope. I know we kind of did it when he first joined, but you know, he could turn heel as well. He can be heel. I think it's kind of an easy sell for him to a bit like Max, you know. I think they can switch, but obviously that's not in the plans yet. I just think it's an exciting time.
yeah. Like I say, I'm not knocking you on that. It's just a case of, like I say, with Max being around so long. I mean, I'm guilty of thinking this at the same time. It's a case of, am I retreading old ground with what I do? Because it's a case of, I don't really want to do that. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that, and obviously there's always that kind of pressure on us as promoters to not just, you know, kind of rehash the same thing over and over. Just say with the reason that I don't see that with Marky is because he's got so much experience in terms of multi characters. It's different for say yourself, who's just a one character handler, pretty much like from start to finish.
Yeah.
You know, Marky's done so many, like more than he probably wants to admit to, but
And
you
so many
know,
regrets.
yeah, probably does, you know, but like the
Chris
success
Jericho
rate,
Jr.
yeah, but the success rate, like nobody is. What has he had? Like three world champion characters, you know, now Max, Jackson, and Rex. I mean, nobody comes close to that. Nobody to consistently just keep coming up with these characters and knocking it out the park. And I think Marky is like all of them characters, what he is exceptionally good at is that style of character. So what I mean by that is Max, Rex, and Jackson, whilst they're all different in their physical appearances, etc., they all follow a similar kind of mold. And I think this is what Marky's good at. Like, they all sit on that line between face and heel. I think he's very, very good at characters who can switch back and forth. That shows his ability as a promo, but every single one of them characters started as a heel, and every single one of them characters turned face. and I just think he's very good at that.
Okay. Like I say, it's just I've never knocked Marky's skill. I mean, I agree, he's absolutely fantastic with what he does. It's just one of those things. I mean, it's a case of with him being around so long, it's a case of it's one of those questions that must have come up in his head.
Yeah, I mean, Polly does. I don't dispute that. Obviously, he'd have to answer that himself, and maybe he will after he's listened to this. But
Maybe
for me,
no, we have to get him on the show at some point.
well, look, we've said before. I get it. Like a lot of the time, to fit around us, we do a lot of these daytime podcasts. I know that doesn't really fit in with a lot of the guys, and I would be very, very happy to do a later evening one with more people involved. I'd love to hear from Marky. I know Dale the Saint said he'd like to get involved. Obviously, Asa, Jeff Steele. He used to do a lot of these. I'd love to get him on.
Maybe we should record one of these on a weekend then.
No, I'm happy to, because I would like to get everybody else's kind of input and perspective, and so nobody has to listen to me talk for 3 hours. But
you've got a great voice, mate.
it's one. I appreciate that, but I would like to hear from you guys, like more reviews, because I said this before. Like, this is everyone's fed. This is for everybody, and you're all involved, and it wouldn't be here otherwise. Despite what JJ says in storylines, but
speaking, no, I've just remembered something.
Go on, mate.
No, it's just going flash forwarding to a second. You remember what we spoke about? Max not explaining why, and you have to put it in a later show. That's your fault.
It's my fault.
Yes, you said Max isn't going to come out here. Marky went with it.
I did, yeah. To be fair, like I basically told everybody, not that they listened though, right? Because I said Max ain't coming out, and then instead he fucking sent Percy out. It's like he just couldn't help himself. I knew that he'd have to get involved.
Percy fits in this case because you're having a match against him.
Like it did, and it was like I said to you, it was one of them scenarios where, obviously, last week I didn't really have time with work to reply, but actually it helped that I didn't reply because of the show. I think if I'd have got too kind of balls deep into a back and forth with everybody, obviously you guys didn't know where the storyline was going until last night. I think it made more sense for me to not really say much more than I said initially.
Well, like I say, we've got speaking of everyone's voices and all that. Going back to it, we do have a few questions. One which will not be, I don't think I will choose to answer, and that is the very last question.
I'll answer it now if you want.
Like I say, you can take honestly a good couple of minutes. I need to just quickly grab something.
Okay, no, that's fine, mate. I've got
go into full detail with the question. Explain what they will do.
Yeah.
I'd go.
I'll try my best.
I am not responsible for what JJ is about to say for the next 90 seconds.
Right. Okay. So the question, just bear with me for a second whilst I find it. The question, I believe, was asked by Ed. Who else? And he said, gun to your head, who would you rather do? Late 90s China or 2024 Rhea Ripley? But they have 1 whole hour to do whatever they wanted to you, and you had to take it, right? So I had a little think about this. Because I'll be honest with you, their kind of physiques and stuff and not really my cup of tea. Not that I'd say no to either of them, but obviously, yeah, they are what they are. But I've got to change it, because for me, I wouldn't. Neither really. If we're talking China before she had a jaw done and stuff, you can forget about that, because she wasn't a looker. I don't know how anyone could get involved in that. But 2001 China, just before she left, and when she'd done Playboy and stuff, she was pretty hot. I can't pretend that she wasn't. She was, and I'd have been all over that. You
And
know,
I'm
God
glad I
rest her.
came back at the end of that sentence.
Yeah, God rest her. But she was Rhea Ripley. Yeah, she's a good-looking girl and that, but like, I don't know. Like I said, for me, like China about 2001, in
Well,
terms of what they would do or what they wouldn't, I have no idea. Like, my
it's
imagination
like
isn't as
90s
vivid.
China, not early 2001 China.
Yeah, I can't do like I said this though. You didn't hear. I said I can't. Not China with like before